We ought to think a little bit longer before we assume our system is the only way one can think about conducting a democracy. To a degree that is amazing to the modern mind, the Athenians kept the management of their public life in the hands of ordinary citizens, away from professors, professionals, experts, bureaucrats, and politicians. At the heart of what we would call the legislative branch of the Athenian democracy was the assembly. Their word was ecclesia. It was open to all the adult male citizens of Athens. During Pericles' lifetime, these may have been 40,000, possibly as many as 50,000 men. The meetings took place outside on a hill called the Pnyx. Citizens sat on the earth of this sharply sloping hill, and the speakers stood on a low platform. The assembly had 4 fixed meetings in each of the 10 periods into which the official year was divided, and also special additional meetings were called for when necessary. Topics included the approval or disapproval of treaties, confirming officials or removing them from office, deciding whether or not to hold an ostracism, questions concerning religion, questions of inheritance, in fact, anything else that anybody wanted to bring up in the assembly. I don't think there's any stronger evidence of the full and final sovereignty of the Athenian people on the most important questions than the fact that that is the way they made those decisions. An assembly of thousands, of course, could not do its business without help. For that, it relied on the Council of 500, chosen by lot from all Athenian citizens. Although it performed many public functions that the larger body could not handle efficiently, its main responsibility was to prepare legislation for consideration by the people. In this respect, as in all others, the council was the servant of the assembly. The assembly could vote down a bill drafted by the council, they could change it on the floor, they could send it back with instructions for redrafting, or they could replace it with an entirely different bill. Full sovereignty and the real exercise of public authority rested directly with the assembly. There was no president, no prime minister, no cabinet. There was not any elected official responsible for the management of the state in general, for formulating or proposing a general policy. The chief elected officials were 10 generals voted for a 1-year term. As their title indicated, they were basically military officials who commanded the army and the navy. They could be re-elected without limit. They had no special political or civil authority. And except on military and naval campaigns, they couldn't give orders to anybody. Even in military matters, the powers of the generals were severely limited. Leaders of expeditions were selected by vote of the full Athenian assembly, which also determined the size of the force and what goals it should pursue. All other officials, and there were a good number of them, were chosen by lot. Allotment was the characteristic device by which the Athenians chose their officials in accordance with the dominant democratic principle, which was equality, which held that any citizen who was capable of performing civil responsibilities well enough, and its corollary that feared allowing executive or administrative power to fall into the hands of a few men, even those who were experienced or had special abilities. For these reasons, the Athenians filled the bulk of their offices by lot and limited tenure to 1 term per man in each office, except for the Council of 500, where a man could serve twice in the course of his life. Generals, however, could be re-elected forever because it was so obvious that issues of skill and ability were literally vital in that job, and so that was the one real exception to being limited to a very short term.